There's no other way for me to say this. I think the Pac-12 is in a lot of trouble. I've had that sinking feeling in my stomach for a little while, but I haven't. I've kept a brave face on for you guys, Pac-12, Pate, and all. I think they're in trouble. I don't have a good feel about what's going on in the western portion of the college football United States of America right now. In fact, I do have a good feel. It's a bad feel. So I have a feel on it. It's just not a good one. It's a bad one. The best thing for college football, I think most of us would agree, is just having vibrance coast to coast. You've got the ACC rolling and the SEC and the Big Ten, even down to the G5 levels, but all the way over to the West Coast. Pac-12 and the like, the Big 12, we want them all good. You may be a Michigan fan and you may say to yourself, I just care about Michigan. Okay, that's cool. There are people out there who really don't care about the overall health of the sport. They just care about their team. I do find that college football fans care about the overall shape of their sport way more than professional sports fans do. Pro sports fans, number one, don't really have to worry about this because it is in everyone's vested interest to be on the same page when it comes to the health and well-being of those sports. And also, there are very few people calling the shots there, whereas in college football, it feels like we've got a million of them. So I wish everyone was healthy. And I wish all these conferences were flying high, and some of them are. The Pac-12 is not. And the logic, once upon a time, was the Pac-12 is going to be fine. Their media rights deal is coming up, true, but they're going to be fine because there are so many more players in the room. There's so many more networks. The streaming giants are in the room. Surely there'll be enough money to go around where even the Pac-12 will cash in. Doesn't sound like it. Doesn't sound like it at all. So Dennis Dodd, I know him as Uncle Dennis. You know him as Dennis Dodd, not by blood, has done a lot of reporting on this, not exclusively. I mean, a lot of folks have this covered from a lot of different angles. I just think Dennis has done a really good job over at CBSSports.com of presenting the Pac-12's perspective as well as the rights holders' perspectives, or the presumed rights holders' perspectives. And it sounds like they're a long ways apart and have been at the negotiating table for quite a while. And the issue sounds like the Pac-12 may have just waited too long. You see, we got new leadership in the Big 12 and the Pac-12. George Kliavkoff is the current commissioner in the Pac-12, and Brett Yormark walked in as the Big 12 commissioner last year at just the right time because he proceeded to put the pedal on the floor and work his way around the Pac-12 in the pecking order and get in line and get a media rights deal secured for the Big 12. And so what looked like a very unstable situation for the Big 12 for a while is now not that. Even with OU and Texas walking out the door. In fact, Brett Yormark got them to leave early or facilitated a deal where they could leave early. So they got some added cash from that. That's a businessman instead of a bureaucrat running things. That's how that's done. Over on the West Coast, maybe not so much. I say maybe because it is very hard to know the full truth of what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm holding out hope. I am pessimistic but hopeful that there may be some things still that we don't know that have a softer landing on this thing than it sounds like we're going to have. So the major networks are just not interested in the price point that the Pac-12 is looking for. And as a result, you've started to hear reporting in the last week. I'm sure you've already heard some of these things, but if you haven't, as I told you before, when you have the streaming giants enter the equation, it is probably last-ditch effort territory. Because no conference wants to be the first conference to have a majority of their games on a streaming network, and especially not the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 product is not nearly as must-see or in demand. The SEC, while they don't want to do it, they could do it and be fine. They don't need to. But if they had to, they could be fine. The Pac-12 is a take-it-or-leave-it product right now, meaning people are very indifferent. I see the numbers. Outside of Oregon and the schools you're about to lose anyway, like Southern Cal, UCLA, etc., very few people find Pac-12 football as appointment television. And so if you make them work to find it, if you put it on Apple Plus, if you put it on Amazon, it's not that it's impossible to find. It's just that if you think about your viewership habits right now, a lot of you who are not in the Pac-12 footprint already, when you end up watching a Pac-12 game, unless you're just a diehard fan like us, it's because it either comes on after another game you had been watching, or it's the last thing on TV that night, or you're just channel surfing and you come across it and you say, oh, college football. Let's see what Cal and Oregon State do tonight. What if you had to search for it? Would you put forth any effort? The answer for a lot of you is no, and I don't blame you. That's okay. If that's the case, and to be clear, those streaming giants' names have entered the equation. If that's the case, that's probably not good territory. So Dennis Dodd's latest report, which I think was released yesterday, sort of detailed what they may stand to profit if they were to partner with any of a number of possible suitors that have been floated out there. And the numbers, I'm telling you, even though as of today some folks have gone on record with Dennis and said otherwise, I'm telling you point blank, if the price points that Dennis Dodd have spelled out recently are anywhere close to the average per year that those universities would get, which is around $25 million, they're done. That lags about $50 million per school per year behind what Big Ten institutions would be getting. Let me translate that for you. The University of Illinois, the University of Indiana would be a $50 million per year richer outfit than the University of Oregon because of the sticker they have on their helmet. Now, again, I need to reiterate, in the interest of full disclosure, I think one of the Arizona schools, either presidents or ADs, was on the record with Dennis just today saying, hey, the numbers, while we may not get what we wanted, it's going to be enough to keep the conference together. I don't believe that. Just point blank. And you know as well as I do, if you followed this stuff, everyone sings the right tune right up until the news breaks that they're out. So that means nothing to me. And it also leads me to ask a number of questions. I mean, Jesse put together a very, very detailed graphic, actually. It's on your screen right now. If you're listening on podcast, it's the top 10 Pac-12 games via TV ratings. Last year, I mean, Washington, Oregon was the most viewed game at 3.6 million viewers, just to give you an idea. That's a rivalry game now. That's one of the biggest games in the Pac-12. I think Michigan, Ohio State did something like 17 mil. And so you're also talking about a Pac-12 in the future that removes USC and UCLA. So you remove even more of the value than they currently have. I don't like where we are now. Okay, so that's all negative. There's no good news I just gave you. A few things to keep in mind. Number one, very few people know the full picture here. So it could be, fingers crossed as I utter this sentence, it could be that George Kliavkoff and the power players on the West Coast do have an ace in their back pocket. I hope they do. Unselfishly, actually, I hope they do. The second possibility that I floated the other night, and I'm going to float it to you again, is there could be an interested third party out there that views the Pac-12 through a different prism than you and I, or maybe even ESPN or Fox or CBS, etc. See, if you work for a media company, you view them strictly through the lens of how much is that inventory worth to us? How much can we sell advertising against that to get our money back and then make a profit? That is the media rights world at the end of the day. But if I'm an interested third party and I have tons of money at my disposal and I need a marketing machine behind whatever it is I do, you can just fill in the blank, whatever it is I do. Pate State Entertainment, for example. I'm flush with cash, and I look at the Pac-12, and they're in distress out there. And all these TV partners are sitting over here on the other side of the river saying, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you guys. We're just not willing to cross the river and risk losing money in the effort to have you. If I'm rich enough to build the bridge, the TV partners are more than happy to carry the games. It's just that it would look like I'm lighting money on fire. And I would be if I was in the strictly transactional business of paying you what your games are worth. But if I take an early loss on fitting the bill so these TV networks and partners can carry your games, but I think the marketing apparatus that comes along with me essentially buying your conference is worth it in the long run for me, that is something that could be explored. If you need to see an example of this, look at what, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark once did with Sprint and NASCAR. Yeah, they didn't always call that thing the Sprint Cup. Long ago, it was the Winston Cup. It became the Sprint Cup for a reason. So you can research that, children, on your own time. I don't know why I clapped. Third thing to keep in mind is if the worst were to happen here, that means we have more realignment chaos coming. And I've got to be blunt with you. I think that's the most likely scenario. Because as of airtime tonight, we have not heard back from any billionaires, and so no one thus far has taken us up on our ideal or our idea of sort of being the 11th hour angel. There has been no George Knox visit to the mound to tell Tony Danza, you got an angel with you right now, and he's going to help you. I don't think that's happening. There is not an angel in the outfield scenario, at least in the cards as I see it. So the most likely scenario is all of a sudden the Pac-12 as you know it crumbles. And you may already say, Josh, isn't that happening? USC and UCLA are gone. Well, you're kind of right. But as of the moment, they are trying to sell to you that they can stay afloat without those two. I don't know that they can. And in the meantime, you just got the Big Ten sitting there. You just got the Big 12 sitting there. And they're looking at those Arizona schools, or in the Big Ten's case, you may be looking at Washington or Oregon. And look, if they head east, figuratively, they're not getting a full cut of that Big Ten pie. But you just heard the numbers I floated from Uncle Dennis. Even if you don't get a full cut, would you rather have 100% of 25 million, or would you rather have 60% of 80 million? I had Stats and Info run the numbers, and it seems like the latter is the proper route. So it also doesn't hurt that you have affiliation with Nike. I don't think Oregon is going to be a poverty program anytime soon, but not everyone on the West Coast is Oregon. So when you say your prayers tonight, throw the Pac-12 in the mix.
Thanks for watching, guys. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Make sure you like the video and please subscribe to the channel. Not just for me, that's how we keep this entire thing free.